some kind of a delay. So ideally, you wouldn't want to take this position, but you would want to take this position with a normal HV interval. So there, then you go ahead with doing your testing. And now here you are not only checking the threshold of capture, but you're also going to look at the response of your QRS, which is very important. So here where we are pacing at 3 volts, you can see that we get non-selective His capture. I draw your attention to V1, where you can see that immediately after the pacing, there is some kind of a little bit of a delta wave like artifact followed by a fairly narrow QRS. Now, thanks to the contribution of this initial myocardial capture, the QRS is slightly broader, about 120 milliseconds. But this still is pretty good compared to your traditional pacing. Now, as you reduce your output and come to 1.5 volts at a particular time, you lose myocardial capture and you just get to selective His capture. Now, look at this again in V1. After your initial pacing artifact, there is this isoelectric interval, which is corresponding to your HV interval, and then your normal looking narrow QRS with a duration which is close to your initial native QRS. And then very interestingly, in this case, what we found was that when we continued to drop the output and come towards the threshold, at about 0.8 volts, we showed a very broad left bundle branch like pattern. And what's happening here? This is selective right bundle capture. So this is capturing only those fibers which are pre-committed to the right bundle. So again, this is a beautiful illustration to show that within the His, you have a capture of the entire system, you have capture including the surrounding myocardium, and you can also selectively capture one of the bundles. So this is basically practically illustrating all the concepts which we talked about. This is also important for you to know how much you're going to program your output to. So obviously here, if I program it below this threshold, I will not get a good result. I'll get a very broad and bizarre looking QRS with isolated capture of right bundle. So I need to program it above my His bundle threshold. So here, in fact, we ended up programming it above 1.5 volts because we wanted to retain the non-selective His capture and have some safety backup as well. So this is how the lead looks like in AP view. This is your small 4 French lumenless lead, which is screwed into the His position. And this is your atrial lead in the right atrial appendage. And to show you how the QRS looks like with pacing. Now, we are doing unipolar pacing here with very large pacing artifacts so that, you can be convinced that this is actually paced QRS and not native QRS. So you can look how after the pacing artifact, how beautifully narrow and normal looking this QRS is. And you can also appreciate that this is non-selective pacing because you can see this tiny delta-like appearance immediately after the pacing artifact. There is no isoelectric interval. The same thing now I'm showing with bipolar pacing. Again, you can see this extremely tiny pacing artifact and a very normal looking QRS. Now, with His bundle pacing, there are certain challenges or limitations. Number one, you're trying for a very narrow target. The His bundle is about 20 millimeter long and about 4 millimeters wide. So you're really homing in on a very narrow zone and you need to precisely locate your lead there and try to get satisfactory parameters within that. Therefore, there is a potential risk that even if there is some micro movement of the lead or micro dislodgement, you might lose your capture or your parameters might become pretty unsatisfactory. Secondly, in addition to this, certain late rise in threshold has been observed in about 10% of cases of His bundle pacing. Now, this has been thought to be either because of micro dislodgement or the fact that there is a fibrous sheath surrounding the His, and therefore this could be playing some role in late rise of threshold, and you could end up with high outputs and relatively greater battery drain. Thirdly, remember I showed you the location of the anatomical location of where your lead is sitting, like hanging at the AV junction, and therefore there is a risk of ventricular undersensing and atrial oversensing with the location of the His bundle lead. There is also a concern, though not borne out much by practical experience so far, that there could be an injury either to the His or to the right bundle during implantation. Certain people have therefore been a little skeptical and said, if you have a normal kind of His bundle to begin with, you could go there with a screw-in lead and you could potentially damage it. And lastly, we said that while most broad QRSs or bundle branch blocks are intrahisian, there is still a proportion of patients with true infrahisian block which you will not be able to correct with His bundle pacing. And this has been estimated to be about 10 to 15% of cases. So one of the other approach which can theoretically overcome some of these limitations of His bundle pacing is left bundle branch area pacing, and therefore a lot of interest has again garnered in the last 2 to 3 years on left bundle branch area pacing. So to again look at this anatomically, so in His bundle pacing, this is where you are trying to target a pretty narrow zone, and in fact this is kind of showing it literally to be too long. It's probably the length is much more. It's actually practically going to be much shorter than this, and within this you're going to be fine picking to see where you can get a correction. Now on the other hand, anatomically we know that the left bundle, unlike the right bundle which is a very narrow and cord-like structure, the left bundle is a broad and fan-like structure. Therefore, instead of going here to the right bundle, if you can go here via the interventricular septum and target a relatively broader area, then you might have an alternative way of approaching the conduction system. Now, one concern which this immediately raises is to say that, well, if I just capture the left bundle alone, will I get a very broad looking right bundle branch block? As it turns out, with practical experience, you do get a right bundle branch block pattern, but surprisingly, the QRS is pretty narrow even with left bundle branch area pacing as compared to His bundle pacing. And secondly, the crucial aspect where the problem with RB pacing is that the left ventricle, the main pumping chamber or the systemic ventricle, gets activated very late. Whereas when you are performing left bundle area pacing, you very quickly recruit the left ventricle, you shorten the left ventricular activation time. At the same time, across the septum, you're also able to get to the right side very quickly. So because of these reasons, left bundle branch area pacing has turned out to be a very satisfactory alternative. And again, I'll show you another case where we switched our plan to left bundle branch area pacing. There is a 55-year-old female, again with symptomatic with dizziness, syncope, and this is her presenting ECG with significant bradycardia as well as junctional rhythm. So again, this particular case, look at the native QRS, very narrow and normal looking. And here, I want to kind of show you the fluoroscopic landmarks of the location for His bundle versus left bundle pacing. So this is your catheter which is marking your His position, and this is where you would target for your His bundle pacing. Now, what you do essentially for left bundle pacing is that you have an imaginary line connecting the tip of your His bundle position to the RV apex, and then you go a couple of centimeters inferiorly and slightly more ventricular, and then you are penetrating the interventricular septum at this particular point of time or this particular place in order to try and capture the left bundle. So in this particular patient, what happened was that his was located at a very high location, and therefore we had an extreme difficulty in reaching the His bundle location. And also we were able to reach the location with a little bit of difficulty, but we found here one of the limitations of His bundle pacing, that our R wave was extremely small here. It was just about 1 millivolt, and therefore we did not want to risk a ventricular undersensing, and therefore we decided to go ahead with a left bundle pacing in this particular case. So here we are using the same sheath, the His sheath, to go a little below and ventricular. You can see that this would be the line which is connecting to the RV apex, and along this imaginary line we go down a little bit, map with the sheath, and then slightly expose the lead. So how do we decide how we are going to capture the left bundle? So there are certain criteria to identify the right location where you are going to screw in the lead. I will not go into it in detail, but I'll just briefly tell you. For example, one of the things we see is that before we penetrate, we just pace with the lead at the particular point, and we look for certain morphological features. For example, a slight notch in the downstroke of V1. And also we look at something known as AVR, AVL discordance, where these QRSs are facing in the opposite direction. So once we identify the right spot to penetrate the septum, then we are going to give about 5 to 6 rapid turns to be able to penetrate. So watch here how the lead comes out of the sheath as we are giving some rapid turns, and then we are able to penetrate into the sufficient depth into the interventricular septum. And here again, there are various parameters to see, because you have to penetrate sufficient depth to reach just subendocardially close to the left bundle, but you should not penetrate through and through into the LV. And that's very important. We use various parameters, including the QRS morphology, as well as the impedance readings, to make sure that we are penetrating just to the right depth. We can also check the lead depth into the system by giving a little bit of contrast injection. You can see the contrast injection here, outlining the septum, showing how deep you have penetrated. So you need to know the measurements of the lead here, as well as you need to have looked at the echo pre-procedure to know the thickness of the IVS, so that you know how deep you can safely go. If you don't go deep enough, you will not achieve true left bundle branch capture. But on the other hand, if you perforate, then you can't accept that. You have to remove the lead and then go in again. Once you are penetrated adequately, you check the morphology and the parameters. Now, the morphology which you will get is like an RS R prime or a right bundle branch like pattern on V1. And this is the morphology on the QRS which you can check. In addition, you can also record a left bundle potential from your pacing lead. So here you can see here on the green is our EP catheter, which is showing you the His signal, and in yellow you can see slightly later than the His, you are having this another sharp potential, which is your left bundle potential. So if you actually demonstrate this left bundle potential, then you know for sure that you are in the left bundle region. So again, certain criteria have been established for left bundle capture. You look at your V1 morphology, you demonstrate left bundle potential, you measure something called the peak LV activation time on your surface ECG, and then you can also demonstrate selective and non-selective left bundle capture. So using a bunch of criteria, you need to confirm that you have actually captured the left bundle. So here is a demonstration of that. So you can see here in panel E that you are initially pacing to look at this particular notch on V1. And then as you're screwing your lead in, slowly your V1 morphology changes, and then you get your particular RSR prime pattern or a RBBB like pattern. You still note that the QRS is relatively narrow. And then finally, when you pace with bipolar pacing, when you also have capture with the anode as well, you end up with a very narrow looking QRS, and this looks pretty good. Again, just like we mentioned for His bundle pacing, you can also have selective and non-selective left bundle pacing. On the left, you have selective pacing where you have this tiny pacing artifact, very small isoelectric interval, and then a narrow looking QRS. You can see the small RSR like pattern in V1. And on the right panel, you have the non-selective left bundle capture where you don't have that isoelectric interval and a slight pseudo delta like appearance. So this is the final position, what looks like in the AP view, where your atrial lead and then your left bundle lead. And here is your post left bundle pacing ECG here. Again, when I'm doing bipolar pacing, look, the interesting fact that even that so-called RBBB pattern disappears. And the reason is your tip here is capturing the left bundle, whereas when you're pacing in a bipolar fashion, this particular lead from anode to cathode to anode is kind of spanning the interventricular septum. So in addition to getting left bundle capture here, you're also quickly activating the right side of the septum. So practically what we see many times with left bundle pacing is that when you do bipolar pacing, and if you adjust your AV delay accordingly, you even lose that little bit of a broadness because of the right bundle capture. And again, you end up with a very nice looking, very narrow QRS, which almost looks like the native QRS. So this is the left bundle pacing QRS, and contrast this with the broad QRS of the usual RV pacing. What a difference there is between the two. So to summarize left bundle branch pacing, you're going to penetrate the interventricular septum and be just subendocardial in the LV to penetrate to capture the left bundle branch. The potential advantages as compared to compared to his bundle pacing are that you are within myocardium, therefore you will have relatively low and very stable pacing capture threshold. And of course, you are going to achieve a narrower QRS just like with his bundle pacing. You have potentially faster LV activation. This is again will have a very important application as a alternative to CRT in LVBB. And here, since you're not at the his location, but you're much more distal, this would be better at overcoming true infrahisian block as compared to his bundle pacing. So if you compare and contrast his versus left bundle pacing, there has been a strong camp which has emerged over the last 2 years in favor of left bundle pacing because it is technically less challenging because you have a broader target area and you are encased in dense muscle, and therefore your stability, your capture threshold, your R wave sensing, all those parameters are going to be much better as compared to his bundle pacing, and higher success rates potentially in true infrahisian block. Of course, the proponents of his bundle pacing argue that still his bundle pacing is the most true form of physiologic pacing as compared to left bundle pacing. But the emerging evidence seems to suggest that practically that the long-term outcomes may be equivalent as far as the QRS activation is concerned with both. Now, I want to finally touch upon the his bundle and left bundle pacing as a potential alternative to CRT. And a lot of interest has come up in this because these modalities have been shown to correct bundle branch blocks so beautifully, and the QRS is so narrow that it would be difficult to achieve such narrow QRS with conventional CRT. So initially, uh, this was tried in a set of people who had failed actually with conventional CRT. So either failed BIV or non-responders to BIV. And of course, in some cases, it was also done as primarily with his bundle pacing. And you will see that compared to the baseline QRS, the QRS is significantly narrowed with his bundle pacing. The ejection fraction significantly improves on an average from 25 to 40%, and the NYHA functional class also significantly improved. And this is again showing us the same thing, in the improvement in various parameters. And the first small but multi-center prospective randomized trial was also done called the HIS-SYNC trial, which randomized patients to his bundle pacing versus CRT. This was unfortunately a rather small and not very well planned study, resulting in a lot of crossovers. And in this particular study, his bundle pacing was shown to be equivalent to CRT in terms of outcomes. But basically, it was a small trial with just 41 patients, and larger studies would throw more light on this. And the proponents of physiologic pacing, in fact, believe that his bundle pacing should even show superior outcomes to conventional CRT. So this is an example of a case where you can see that there is a CRT D, but instead of LV lead, his bundle lead has been put in as a substitute for a CS lead. And this is the pre and post ECGs from that particular case. You can see a very broad left bundle branch block, pre-procedure and post-procedure. Very nicely, the left bundle has been corrected and you have a normal, narrow, native looking QRS. Achieving this kind of a narrow QRS, we know from practical experience in CRT, is very difficult. Only in a few cases would you get such an excellent narrowing of the QRS with traditional CRT. To take this concept even further, in certain cases, it would be even useful to do what is known as his optimized CRT or hot CRT. Here, you're going to do a his bundle pacing, plus you're also going to put a LV lead. So there are going to be 4 leads, right atrial, right ventricular, either a his bundle or a left bundle lead, and a CS lead. Now, this would be useful in those patients with very diseased myocardium. Now, if your left bundle branch block is purely because of a conduction system issue, then you can overcome it hopefully with his bundle pacing alone. But if there is significant myocardial delay as well, then you may need an additional LV pacing as well. And certain studies have shown, which have investigated this concept of hot CRT, and they have shown that you take your baseline QRS, just do BiV pacing alone, you achieve some narrowing. Just do His bundle pacing alone, you achieve certain narrowing. But when you combine both with hot CRT, you get the best narrowing of the QRS. Now, obviously, this is not going to be required in each and every candidate, but it is especially useful in those who have both conduction system and myocardial disease contributing to conduction delay. Similarly, there are also studies now which have investigated left bundle branch pacing for CRT. This is one of the largest studies to date, where they took more than 250 patients and did left bundle branch pacing as the primary modality for CRT. And you can see how significantly they were able to narrow QRS, not only in patients with LVBB, but even in those with non-LVBB morphology. Good improvement in NYHA functional class, good improvement in EF, and a good reduction in LV diameter. Now, again, this is not a randomized comparison with CRT, but we know historically what kind of results we get with CRT. And this data clearly shows that this is pretty good, equivalent, if not better than CRT. So both these modalities of physiologic pacing are holding now significant promise to emerge as an alternative to CRT. Of course, more studies are needed, but especially in our context, this is very exciting because now you can theoretically do CRT with just a dual chamber pacemaker, not with a CRT, and this is going to have significant economic implications. So there are certain potential unknowns with conduction system pacing. As I said, it has literally exploded on the scene over the last 3 to 4 years. So we still need long-term data to ensure that the long-term data are continuing to show safety and reliability with conduction system pacing. Concerns have been raised up to what would be the issue or how it would be different if some patients have a pacemaker infection and need lead extraction. We have very limited experience with lead extraction with conduction system pacing. There have also been concerns raised about the endurance of the lead, especially with regard to left bundle pacing, where you are burying almost 1 to 1.5 centimeters of the lead within the thick interventricular septum. With repetitive cardiac motion, whether there is going to be any structural damage to the lead or the insulation in the long term is a concern. But so far, there have been no indications of any such deleterious effects, and also whether there are going to be any long-term effects of the presence of the lead on the native conduction system. So hopefully in the future, we'll continue to get answers to this. So to summarize, conduction system pacing or physiologic pacing aims to mimic the natural activation of the heart by capturing and recruiting the conduction system. And this yields the best physiology for optimal cardiac mechanics. The two methods which are practiced are His bundle pacing and left bundle branch area pacing. And the exciting thing is the ability to correct bundle branch blocks and narrow the QRS by doing this. And therefore, it holds promise not only to significantly improve your outcomes with the routine pacing, but also to emerge as an alternative to CRT. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions on this.
Yeah, sir, it's an excellent presentation. And in fact, it widened my narrow idea of, what pacing means. Traditional thinking is pacing is the simplest intervention which can be done by every cardiologist or any cardiologist. But now you really widened the scope of pacing, and the cornerstone in this entire procedure is more and more narrowing of QRS. And it's an excellent presentation. I have a couple of questions. See, putting a lead at His bundle or in close to left bundle branch, so you are almost closer to the base of the septum. How is that lead going to affect tricuspid valve kinetics? Is there any data on that?
Yeah, so I think as far as the tricuspid valve kinetics are concerned, it's not very different from our routine pacing, because even in our routine pacing, we are going through the tricuspid valve, and there are certain proportion of cases which end up with lead-induced tricuspid regurgitation. And this mainly happens when your lead basically enters through one of the chordae tendineae, or interferes with the tricuspid valve apparatus. Fortunately, this has not been found to be a major problem. But for example, certain operators recommend, because of that, when you're doing traditional RV pacing, that instead of entering end-on with the lead, you try to prolapse into the RV with the loop of the lead, where you will have a relatively lesser chance of interfering with tricuspid mechanics. So with his bundle pacing, where you're literally not even going through the tricuspid valve, the chances of that are very low. It is theoretically possible with left bundle pacing, but so far it has not emerged to be a major concern as such.
Yeah. So I have one more question. See, regarding bundle branch pacing, replacing CRT, so especially in a heart failure patient. So what percentage of patients do you think bundle branch pacing may replace CRT? Because in an, say, heart failure, the conduction abnormality is too complex thing. It may not be limited to your his bundle or left bundle branch or your Purkinje network. I mean, the problem can be even in ventricular myocardium. So what percentage of patients, I mean, in existing whatever data we have, we can avoid CRT and put only left bundle, I mean, your physiological pacing?
Right. So again, a very good question, and I think the data is still accumulating with regard to this. So the last study which I showed is one of the biggest practical experiences so far with left bundle pacing as an alternative to CRT. So it's not a randomized comparison, it's more a registry data from several centers around the world. And they have looked at about 280 cases where they did left bundle pacing as a primary modality instead of going for CRT at all. And a lot of these cases are actually from India, where patients who were around, couldn't afford CRT, just going around, and then they said, rather than leave them alone, let's just try a left bundle pacing with a dual chamber pacemaker. And in that particular study, they had about a 83% success rate. So that is a pretty good in terms of actually achieving good left bundle capture and overcoming the bundle branch block. So as you say, in the remaining, say 15 to 20% of cases, especially with diseased hearts, here we are not dealing with normal hearts anymore. These are hearts with cardiomyopathy, with scar. So in about easily, I think 15 to 20% of the cases, or maybe a little more, you're going to have significant myocardial scar where just capturing the conduction system alone may not help. And that is why now they are also thinking of the concept of hot CRT or LOT CRT, left bundle optimized CRT, where you use, after you do your conduction system pacing, you still haven't got enough narrowing of the QRS. You then additionally place an LV lead as well, and then try to see, I'm going to try and overcome my myocardial block as well. So if the block is partly in the conduction system, partly in the myocardium, try and overcome both. And again, there is accumulating evidence for these concepts of hot CRT and LOT CRT. So I agree that ultimately there will be a bunch of cases where the disease will be so advanced, I think no technique will be able to overcome the dyssynchrony. But hopefully in a good majority of cases, we are hoping, say somewhere around 75 to 80%, we can have a reasonable alternative in the form of conduction system pacing.
Thank you.
So I think we have some questions from the chat box.
Chat box.
One question is, can his pacing replace CRT? Yes, I think that's what we just discussed now. So I think at this point, it's probably difficult to make a sweeping statement saying that, his pacing is going to completely replace CRT at this point of time. But all the emerging evidence so far shows that it has very exciting potential. And I think especially for countries like ours, I think it has a significant implications as well, because I easily think that 70 to 80% of the patients with CRT indication in our setup don't get it. because they simply can't afford it. And the difference between the cost of a CRT and dual chamber pacemaker is huge. And therefore, if you can, leverage it for the right candidates, you can certainly expand the coverage of the patients who are going to benefit from CRT. So, we are waiting for more data, but I can tell you that many centers not many, few centers in India and around the world have actually started, following this concept already. They have started doing uh, conduction system pacing as an alternative to CRT. Another question, how common is it in today's practice? I would say still not common enough. There is a learning curve. You do need certain additional equipment. So right now there is an additional cost involved in it as compared to your routine pacing. So if you're just going to do routine pacing for a patient, and if you want to go ahead with conduction system pacing, right now the way they have done it is, they have additional charges for the sheath and the lead. So it does add a little bit of cost to it. So still it has been taken up only by a few centers in India, and certain operators are much more experienced compared to the others. But the way things are going, I think it is going to expand more and more. And I think it is going to become imperative for all of us to kind of, know it and to start doing it.
Is
So
it possible without mapping? Actually, we are doing you are doing mapping guided pacing, no? Is it possible without mapping, any kind of trial, or somebody has tried?
Unfortunately, I think, without mapping, you really wouldn't be able to do a good job, because the fluoroscopic landmarks are useful, but it's only a rough guide. Ultimately, you need to map your His, you need to map your left bundle, and you also need to pay very careful attention to your QRS morphology, to impedance, and a lot of other parameters to ensure. So in fact, especially for left bundle pacing, there are about 5 criteria which you need to satisfy to say that you have truly captured the left bundle. See, it's very easy to go a few millimeters here or there and just capture the septum with a better QRS as compared to apical pacing. When you do septal pacing, you will get a little narrower QRS as compared to apical pacing, but that will not be recruiting the conduction system. So there is a big difference. So you really need to, map and ensure capture of the conduction system to truly do physiologic pacing.
I think another problem with this left bundle branch pacing, as you're going to tunnel through the septum, you must be very sure before you start tunneling. I'm right. It's not like an so any other routine pacing where you just you just fix the lead and you'll pull it back and then you'll keep it again somewhere else. Is that going to be a problem?
Yeah, that's again a very good question. So this concern has been there that, okay, you're kind of going into the IVS, and what happens if you go through and get into the LV endocardium? So as it turns out, it has happened in many cases now, practically around the world. And the most important thing is to recognize that it has happened. Now, so far with the Medtronic lead, it's a very slim 4 French lead. So we know we have plenty of experience in creating through and through holes in the interatrial septum. So we are doing that on a routine basis for balloon mitral valvotomy and for atrial septal lift. And we know that, we get away with kind of 4-5 millimeter holes which we make through, and only rarely does it result in a shunt which needs to be closed. Now the interventricular septum, as it turns out, is even better than the interatrial septum in that, because it's muscle. It's going to seal. And number 2, the hole you create is extremely small with the 4 French lead. The main important thing why you need to recognize it is that if you have gone through and through, number 1, your parameters will not be satisfactory. Even if your parameters look kind of satisfactory at the time, that lead is not stable. If you leave that lead there, it's going to dislodge. There's a very high chance that it's going to dislodge, or next day your pacing parameters are going to go and you're going to lose pacing. So we monitor the impedance very carefully when we are tunneling the lead. And after a certain extent, sometimes, we are advancing very cautiously, 1 turn, half a turn, rechecking, half a turn, rechecking that way. to be sure that we are just there, but we have not gone through and through. But occasionally, if you do go through, all that you need to do is recognize it, remove the lead completely and go in at a slightly different spot. You should not just withdraw the lead and leave it, because you should not leave it at that place where you have already created a through and through hole. So as long as you recognize that, withdraw and go back in again, you do very well. And so far, again, there has been no report of any problem being caused by a shunt created or a hole created in the interventricular septum. So that part has been very reassuring so far.
Another thing, see, when you're tunneling through the septum, how often people create AV fistulas? Because your septal arteries, which are coming down, there is every possibility, you may tunnel through.
Right. So that's the other aspect. Again, the way Dr. Sharath is asking questions, it looks like he's been doing left bundle pacing on a regular aspect. So again, a very rare but theoretically possible complication. There has been, I think, 1 or 2 cases reported so far of septal artery injury. That we have very limited data on this, but it seems to be more of an issue if you go too distally. I showed you the fluoroscopic landmark where you have his position, and then you're having this line going to the RV apex. You typically go about a couple of centimeters below that, and then you try not to go too much more distally, because what happens is there your left bundle starts fanning out more and more. You may still capture one of the fascicles, but you would rather be a little more proximal where the fibers are bunched close together. And number 2, for some reason, if you go a little more distally, the chances of hitting one of the septal arteries seems to be more. So there was one case report where there was a septal artery injury and the patient developed some chest pain. All that was done was the lead was removed from that location. They just observed for some time, managed conservatively, and nothing happened. And actually, they were able to complete the left bundle pacing in that particular case. But it is a theoretical possibility to be aware of. And therefore, you have to be monitoring the patient and looking at the ECG when you're doing that. But again, so far with the, so many, more than 1,000 cases of left bundle pacing which have been done over the world, this hasn't been encountered to be a common problem so far. So, but theoretically, yes, this is potentially one of the complications which might happen.
Perforating septal artery, it won't create any issue because we keep doing, in retrograde functions.
Right.
When problem comes, so we perforated and it started creating a septal hematoma, which is expanding. You left the lead there and you came out. So there is every possibility your lead may move away because of expanding septal hematoma. I mean, that is one thing theoretically possible. So,
true. Yeah, I think that's very true. And therefore, in either way, if in any way your lead position is not optimal, either you have gone through and through or you have created a vascular injury, it is the most important thing is to recognize it at that time, remove the lead completely and go in a fresh location. The issues happen if it is not recognized and left in place. So again, that with experience, you kind of get better in recognizing those things. I think one more interesting question is, what is the experience of post AV ablation as far as his bundle pay? Again, a very good question. There has been experience accumulating, and several cases have been done with his bundle pacing for post AV junction ablation, because here the concern is that you have gone there around that spot, you have ablated, you have created some damage and edema. Can you still be successful with his bundle pacing? And again, the data is very encouraging so far, and there have been a few papers published on conduction system pacing for AV junction ablation, as well as conduction system pacing for post TAVR situation, where when you created an AV block because of TAVR, where your valve is actually crushing the conduction system at that particular point of time, can you still do it? And there have been papers on this showing that it is feasible in these situations. And here again, the proponents of the left bundle camp argue these indications as one more reason why going a little more distally away from the site of potential damage and doing left bundle pacing rather than his bundle pacing may be theoretically superior in these situations. But yes, it is feasible in post AV junction ablation as well.
So thank you, Dr. Kumar. I think so it's really an eye-opener for all of us. And I feel this is the new red pill which we have to take in conviction. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it is
Your
the
matrix.
way it is. I think that's a safe statement to make. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. Bye-bye.
So it's been a great, I think, learning experience for me as well so far. So hopefully we can expand and do more cases in the future. Thank you everyone for attending and have
Thank
a
you,
good
sir.
day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.